Greetings, dear reader. I am Erik Eldritch, and today we'll be reading my book, Don't Worry, I Won't Be Long, The Tale of Greypelt and the Thieves of Reggio. Back in Reggio, the mood was tense. Drudo paced impatiently through the hideout as he waited for his thieves to return. Marino watched his master nervously, expecting Mount Drudo to go volcano at any moment. Andronikos couldn't bear to lift his gaze to any of the thieves in the hideout. So many men had been sent to their deaths on his behalf. And as the hours passed, and no more returned, it became evident that the death toll was higher than any of the thieves had thought possible. "Any word?" the giant snapped unexpectedly at Grazia as she entered his line of sight. The chief of information had sent her spies out into the city to gather any news from travelers coming in or from the watchmen on the city walls. She did not possess Ferrante's knack for diffusing their boss's terrible temper, but gave it her best with a slow, even-toned answer. Nothing yet. Drudo snarled and went back to his pacing and his angry thoughts. "I'll join the search myself," Grazia announced. "If my spies return here, tell them to report directly to the master." Drudo waved her off dismissively. The leader of the thieves sensed that his spy master only wanted an excuse to escape his exasperating anger, but she would no doubt be more useful outside the hideout than within. Even if she was just out for a leisurely stroll, she might bump into one of the stragglers and guide them home. "Do you want me to go back for them?" Marino offered. He was terrified to draw the furious giant's attention, and terrified too of encountering the Doghead and her dragon. But with each of his master's laps around the hideout, the thief was growing far more terrified of what might happen here. "You?" Drudo spat back, wild-eyed. "You already left them for dead." "They were dead," Marino answered. "I saw that beast drag them down and drown them with my own eyes." The thief was fairly sure Drudo could not be convinced, at least not in the short term, but he didn't want anyone else in the guild thinking that he was a coward. After all, he was the only man to return alive from the jaws of the Nilotic dragon, and he wanted the story to be a heroic one. "I told you those ruins were cursed," Therion chimed in from the edge of the room. Whether the centaur was trying to help or just impishly inflame his boss's fury was anyone's guess. Drudo did not take the comment well. The giant grabbed up a nearby chair and flung it hard at the half-horse across the room. Only his centaurine agility saved Therion from injury. "Don't tell your superstitious tales in here," the giant bellowed. "None of you," he commanded, looking around at each of his thieves in the room. "That Cynocephalus is no minion of Orcus or Demon Dog or any of your ridiculous rumors. She and her creature are flesh and blood, just like us." "I beg forgiveness, my lord, but they cannot be," Marino responded, more concerned with his own glory than the mental state of his master. "We caught the hellhound utterly naked with just a stick to defend herself, and yet she fought so fiercely that none but I returned. We went there with Laverna's blessing to take the lives of the Grey Devil and her reptilian titan, but they were not Laverna's to give. Only by Laverna's grace was her own thief returned to us." The daring storyteller gestured to Andronikos for effect. Marino did not have the benefit of centaurine reflexes and had distracted himself with his own storytelling, so the flying chair that came for him struck him and toppled him to the floor. The blow was a painful one, but it occurred to Marino that his master's outbursts felt less forceful than the similar attack that the dragon had landed against him earlier that day. He decided to keep this to himself for the moment, but made a note to add that detail to the tale when he told it in the taverns later. Andronikos was still dead to the world during Marino's monologue, but reacted with a jolt at the sudden thump when the storyteller received his heavy-handed review. It was also quite a surprise to feel Drudo's massive fist lifting him up out of his seat. Marino's tale had done nothing to ease the guildmaster's frayed nerves, but it had reminded him who the cause of all this trouble was. The difference in size between the kin of giants and the tiny Panati were so great that Drudo could hoist the little fellow up with a single hand. "This is all your fault, you little wretch," the giant accused. "You're not worth the men that gave their lives to save you." Andronikos had no response. It was true. "Don't you dare lie to me. Is it at least true that you have the carnelian swan? Yes, the Panati whimpered, hidden away. Where? Something inside the Panati broke. Throughout his encounter with the Cynocephalus, he had not prayed to Laverna for relief, but to Drudo and his thieves' guild. Even as the devil dog and her terrible beast had bared their fangs against him, the little crook had held on to hope because he believed that Drudo would rescue him. Now, with his would-be savior enraged and that otherworldly bounty hunter still tracking him, it was suddenly and painfully obvious that the only person in the whole world who would lift a finger for him was himself. No, Andronikos responded. The little man's guilt and despair morphed into a grim determination that took the gargantuan guildmaster aback. What do you mean, no? Not yet, the Panati elaborated. Not while the Cynocephalus lives. She's a bounty hunter, sent here to extradite me back to Theodosia. If I'm dragged off to my death, I take the location of the carnelian swan with me. Get rid of her, and the gem is yours. The room was deadly silent. The normally boisterous thieves had all shut their jaws and craned their necks to hear how the little Panati had dared to defy their giant boss. Now they all held their breath as they waited for Drudo's response. The guildmaster, for his part, was reevaluating the diminutive delinquent. Besides Drudo himself, Andronikos was the only soul in the whole guild who had shown any hint of sadness over the men who had lost their lives. In the face of hopelessness, the Panati had not given up, but steadied his nerve and played his hand. The giant hated to admit that Ferrante might be dead. Nobody could replace his cherished friend and deputy. But if he was gone, the guild would need men like Andronikos to fill the void. The giant loosened his grip and let the Panati fall to the ground. The trained thief landed easily on his feet. The sound of his long ears flopping down against his tunic pierced the suspenseful silence throughout the hall. Drudo turned away and started leaving for his private quarters. You all heard him, the boss barked over his shoulder. Kill the woman and we get the gem. We'll make a plan in the morning. Wake me if there's any word of survivors. When Drudo was safely out of earshot, the hideout returned to its normal clamor. Thieves traded rumors of dogheads and dragons, imagined how the deed might be done, and what they would do with the winnings. One of the thieves jovially clapped Andronikos on the shoulder. Look at that! I can't believe our little Andronikos stood up to the boss like that. I'll bet being in Drudo's grip is scarier than any dragon. Andronikos answered, but did not echo the joyful demeanor of his guildmate. Say that after you've seen the dragon. From beneath the dark depths of slumber, Bruno suddenly felt the cart come to a stop. The change of pace spurred the thief's mind to return him to the waking world. Thankfully, it had been a dreamless sleep this time, but the lack of any sense of time left the Calabrian surprised to find himself very far from where he had last had his eyes open. It was still the pitch black of night, but Bruno could tell that he was back on the cobblestone streets of Reggio. For a moment the swordsman could almost believe that the previous day had all been a dream, that the encounter with the wolf woman and her swamp dragon had all been imagined. But the fact was that he was still in the Cynocephalus's cart, full of the loot she had gathered from his dead comrades and pulled by the dreaded reptilian. The saurian itself was currently glancing over its shoulder at its passenger with primitive curiosity, a rather frightful sight to wake up to. Greypelt was busying herself with the bundle of severed heads that she had collected from her victims. Her cynocephalous senses had apparently alerted her to Bruno's return to consciousness, and she addressed him without looking away from her work. Good, you are awake, she started. It's time to turn these in. Be my translator and I'll pay you for your service with a portion of the reward. From the request, Bruno realized where they were. The bounty office! He spoke aloud and tried to spring to his feet. But the crunching sensation in his chest was another painful reminder of how real the day had been. Greypelt turned to face him, and once again the moonlight flashed in her nocturnal eyes. Don't worry, we won't be long. Make yourself useful, and I'll have no reason to turn you in. Bruno wasn't sure if the remark was meant to be threatening or comforting, but the thief found a bit of both in it. Again, he felt completely at her mercy, so helpless against the power of this otherworldly Amazon. But if that also meant that the thief was under her protection, then may heaven save the soul of any lawman who might try to apprehend him tonight. The swordsman accepted the offer and carefully lowered himself from the cart to avoid exciting his broken rib any more than necessary. The cynocephalus followed with the gruesome proof of her deeds in tow. Despite the late hour, the bounty office was always open to anyone who had business. After all, it was normal for criminals to strike at night, and better to report crimes quickly, and best if one could catch them in the act and haul them down to the guardsmen of the bounty office right away. But it was apparently late enough that the officer at the desk had snuffed out his candle and drifted off to sleep in his chair. Greypelt noticed a small bell on the counter and rang it. The sound brought the man to life with a series of snorts and sputtering noises. Forgive me for my moment of slothfulness, citizens, the officer apologized. But you've come at quite the late hour. As he spoke, he fumbled through his pockets for his flint and steel to relight his candle. Strange that you've come without a guiding light yourselves. What business brings you here? Bruno translated the Latin introduction for Greypelt and delivered her response. As for the light, she's a cynocephalus. She doesn't need one to see, and I've got just enough vision and sense to follow where she leads. She's got a bounty to collect, or several of them, actually. Cynocephalus, you say? That's rare down here in Reggio. Probably not many in all Italia. Ah, here we are, the man exclaimed as he finally felt the missing fire starter. I hope you'll forgive my human eyes, but I do need the flame to see at this hour. Bruno saw the bright sparks fly in the darkness. The candle wick caught flame, and its faint light slowly crept its way to the dog-headed bounty hunter and her long ropes strung with the heads of criminals. It was clearly a shock to the officer, who slowly muttered, Salus Samonia, in prayer as he took in the scene before him. These are all criminals, you say? The man finally asked. You're sure of it? Bruno caught the suspicion in his voice and worried that he was close to deciding that Greypelt was the one who should be locked up. A more conniving criminal might have seen this as an opportunity to pit his enemies against each other, but by now Bruno just wanted to collect his coin for a smooth translation and be done with this mess. He quickly consulted with his canine client and then explained. They attacked the lady on the road to Reggio, hoping for easy plunder, no doubt, but as it turns out, she's quite the fighter. They were no match for her. I think you'll find that they were all from Drudo's guild. That one there is his deputy, Ferrante, I think. So it is. So it is, the officer confirmed in amazement. You mean to tell me you two slayed every one of these yourselves? Just her, actually, Bruno deflected. I'm just a translator. My only spoils from the fight was a broken rib. I'm sure you did fine, my boy, the officer reassured him. You're both lucky to have come out of that alive. Let me go fetch Donaldo. He's great with faces. He'll know what your pay is for these scoundrels. And I'll see if I can scrounge up some herbal brew for your rib. You've earned it tonight. Thank you, sir, the thief replied gratefully, though the irony weighed heavy upon him. To the career criminal, the bounty office was a dreadful location, the foyer of the gallows. Just being near it was dangerous. Besides the city guard officers who were always stationed inside, it was usually crawling with bounty hunters, adventurous nobles, out-of-work mercenaries, and other such people who would jump at the chance to apprehend a wanted man. Bruno did not suspect that Greypelt had bothered to plan the timing of this visit, as she had neither tarried nor hurried on her way, but it occurred to him that if it were intentional, arriving in the dead of night was perfect for a visit from a thief. The place was almost empty, and anybody trying to identify him would be doing so in the pitch black or flickering candlelight. If not for the dead silence of night, Bruno wouldn't have noticed it, but he heard the faint rattle of Greypelt releasing the peace straps on her falchion. Were he more attuned to the mannerisms of the cynocephaly, the human might have noticed that her ears had perked up and were probing an unexpected noise coming from the direction that the officer had disappeared to. And were he blessed with canine senses himself, Bruno would have heard what she heard. More men were approaching than the bounty seekers had anticipated. The warrior wolf had no reason to believe that the officers of the law were planning some kind of attack, but after fighting off 2 mobs of men from Reggio already, she had her guard up. In short order, a new man appeared and greeted them, introducing himself as the aforementioned Donaldo, and as the cynocephalus had detected, he was not alone. Several guard officers rambled in behind him, disheveled and clearly recently awakened. Thankfully, it was quickly evident that they meant no harm. The first guardsman had apparently roused them all to show off the wondrous character that had appeared before them. Their emotional states quickly transformed from annoyance to amazement. Bruno translated one of them saying that he wouldn't have believed the tale if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. Greypelt handed over her string of human heads, and the guards carefully counted and identified as many as they could, holding them close to the candle flame and consulting with each other in rapid Latin. Pens scribbled and abaci clacked as the lawmen updated their records and calculated how much they owed this fortuitous foreigner. Bruno made a point to stand behind his mysterious master and kept himself out of the identifier's candlelight. The first guard reappeared before the tallying was finished with 2 tankards in his hands. One was full of hot, medicinal-smelling liquid for Bruno, and the other was a bergamot tisane he had prepared for Greypelt. Bruno thanked him deeply and explained the gift to his outsider employer. Although the reward had been given by his natural enemy, the thief still felt pride in Reggio's local delicacy. It's made from a special fruit that grows around here, the bergamot. The taste is too strong to eat raw, but they can be cooked into pastries or tisanes or such things. The sweet taste is popular with the ladies in Reggio, but you'll have to let us know if it strikes the cynocephalus tongue the same way. Breathe it in for a bit before you sip. It's a drink to be savored. Greypelt tried to thank the guardsman in what she knew of northern Latin, and followed the instructions to enjoy the drink. She was not the type who enjoyed being the center of attention, since the traveler had come to associate this sensation with imminent danger. But she had also learned that it was important to play her part in the silly roles that the hairless apes invented for their little societies. The Calabrian stood on pins and needles as they waited for Greypelt's review, and then rejoiced when she gave her approval. Bruno's celebration was cut short by the return of the pain in his chest, so the guardsmen left the pair to enjoy their drinks and went to help his fellow officers tally the heads. Eventually, the accounting was finished, and the guards produced a stack of silver ducats from their vault. Greypelt cocked an eyebrow and lifted her ears at the amount she was given. "Really?" she asked. She inspected the coins closely and tested one against a lead weight on a folding scale that she produced from one of her belt pouches. The guardsman needed no translator to interpret her surprise and asked Bruno, "What does she make of it? Too much or too little?" Whether it was her obvious martial prowess, the great work she had done for them, or her skimpy apparel, the men of the bounty office seemed eager to leave a good impression on the mysterious bounty hunter. "More than she expected from a band of highway robbers," Bruno answered after inquiring. He paused a bit before translating. She wonders who they were. Why was she asking, he wondered. There wasn't anything the guards could tell her that he couldn't. "Ah, yes, it's not them that are the problem so much, but their guildmaster Drudo, a descendant of Gigantes who has inherited their strength and temper. He has the city in fear, the peasantry are in his pocket. If anyone tries to bring justice against one of his thieves, he retaliates with deadly force." "It's clear you're a foreigner, my dear," one of them addressed Greypelt directly in passable Greek. "Only the fates know what that man will try to do in the name of vengeance. If you're staying in Reggio, make it short." "You too, my boy," the first guardsman told Bruno. "Even if you think you're just a translator, Drudo will be after anyone he thinks deserves it. You sound like a local. It won't be safe for you here in Reggio. Get out if you can, or at least go into hiding." The comment struck Bruno hard. What would Drudo do to him? The thieves would probably pat him on the back for giving it his best and skirting by with his life and a little coin, but only heaven knew what their boss would do. And what an ignoble end it would be to survive both a fight with a dragon and a trip to the bounty office just to be killed by your own boss when you got home. "That," another one said with a smirk, "or bring us Drudo's head next time. If anyone can put that man in his grave, it must be this fearsome Amazon before us." The other guards guffawed at his audacity. One of them slapped him on the shoulder and admonished, "Don't be greedy." Once her translator let her in on the joke, the cynocephalus grinned maliciously and practiced her only Calabrian Latin phrase. "Don't worry, I won't be long." The men whistled at her bravado and dared to hope that this strange traveler might be the end of Reggio's accursed thief guild once and for all. Bruno exchanged parting pleasantries on both of their behalves, and eventually thanked the guardsman for the healing brew. Once they were outside the office, Greypelt handed her translator the payment that she had promised him. "Are you sure? That's a lot." "The whole payment is a lot," Greypelt assured him. "And it sounds like you'll need it, if this Drudo is so dangerous." "Yeah, I don't know if I should go back to him and the guild," the thief pondered. "Maybe I'll find a little hot spring village up in the hills and rest my rib and then see what the bars in Messina are like. You're the traveler, you got any suggestions?" "Silence," the wolf-woman responded, not dismissively or rudely, but in her usual matter-of-fact monotone voice. Her beast, Latifa, greeted her with a strange gurgling tune that Bruno hadn't heard it produce so far. The cynocephalus addressed her pet with a quiet query in Arabic that Bruno didn't recognize. The reptile apparently indicated some direction, and then the canine shot off into the blackness of night. Despite her size, the Ninki-Nanka and her crocodilian relatives were creatures of stealth. While a dog might indicate a disturbance to its master with noisy barks or whining, Latifa had been trained by her Nile beastmasters to convey such things as inconspicuously as possible. Bruno, who was not well versed in the practice of Archosaurian animal husbandry, was rather taken aback by the sudden move. It wasn't long before his human eyesight lost the gray blur in the shadowy alleyway. He would have been happy to take it as a sign that their fates had finally diverted and left into the night, but his horse was still tethered to the doghead's cart, which was still guarded by her dreaded swamp dragon. After getting this far with his life and limb intact, he wasn't about to risk any reptilian retaliation by tampering with his horse. The incredible creature glanced at him nonchalantly for a moment, and then returned its nocturnal gaze back in the direction that her master had disappeared to, apparently quite oblivious to the consternation she was causing. But surely, Bruno reasoned, the traveler wasn't going to leave her cart and companion for good. She'd be back at any moment, and he could reclaim his ride when she returned. Indeed, it wasn't long before the cynocephalus returned, and she wasn't alone. She had a small humanoid figure in her grasp, maintaining an arm lock with one hand and covering her prisoner's mouth with the other. "My dear Latifa sensed another Panati lurking about," Greypelt explained. "Not the one I lost, unfortunately. This one's a woman. Tell me, is she one of yours?" She yanked her captive out of the shadows and into the moonlight so the human could see. As the silver glow fell upon the Panati woman's face, she looked up at Bruno with confusion in her eyes. "No," claimed the criminal, I don't recognize her. It was too much. Far too much to have this burden on his shoulders as well. Now, my little human," the cynocephalus admonished with a disturbingly devilish tone in her voice. "What have I told you about lying to me?" Bruno's heart sank. He had forgotten her alleged truth-sensing power. He hadn't fully believed in it. Was he really so bad at lying that he had just doomed the woman he was trying to save? "But you are a useful one, aren't you?" the Grey Devil continued. "Even when you lie, you tell me a lot. Who would be worth lying about at this point? Someone special to you? No, I don't see that sort of flicker in your eyes. Someone important to your guild, then? Ah, yes. The spy master. You did mention her, did you not?" With each accusation, the Amazon read the responses in her human's face and let them confirm her theory. Bruno fell to his knees. Please, I beg of you, don't lay this burden upon me as well. Please let her go." "Nonsense," Greypelt scoffed. "Your hands are clean. She's the one who thought it would be smart to snoop about the bounty office. My dear Latifa would have sniffed her out either way. And without you here, I would have walked her back into that bounty office and asked them who she was. Just imagine what those brutes might have done with her. I'd say she owes you her life, my dear human." The she-wolf put her face close to her prisoner's, then lowered her voice and spoke. "If you are Drudo's thief of information, I'm sure you know your Greek. And I'm sure you realize that if you make a fuss now, the guardsmen from the bounty office will take you away. And neither of us wants that." She slowly removed her hand from Grazia's mouth. "What do you want?" the spymaster demanded softly. "A moment's rest, to be honest," the canine admitted. "Consider yourself my guest for now, and we'll sort out our business somewhere more comfortable." The dog-headed Amazon shoved her newest conquest against the side of her cart, while she fished about for rope to bind her up. "Are you always so hospitable to all your guests?" the new Panati asked wryly. It had been ages since the Chief of Information had exposed herself to any dangerous situations, and the indignancy of being caught felt worse than any fear of what her captor might have in store. "Not at all," Greypelt laughed. "The rope is a great luxury. Most of my guests must settle for steel." The spymaster had no idea what manner of joke this might be. She didn't know the cynocephalus well enough to judge, so looked at Bruno instead. "She is more than deadly," the human answered her silent question. "For your own sake and ours, do not cross her. She has been quite gracious with me since I surrendered, but every one of our thieves who attacked her were put to death. Marino and I escaped from her dragon, not from her." Grazia recognized the sincerity in her fellow guildsman's voice. Then the gravity of his statement struck her. "All of them? Even Ferrante?" "Even him," Bruto confirmed. "Please, Grazia, for the sake of the guild, prolong your life and do as she commands." The Panati accepted her fate and stoically allowed the Grey Devil to bind her. The ropes were followed with a gag and blindfold. "My sanctuary in the city is a ways away. I'm sure you appreciate that I don't trust you not to cause trouble along the way." She stroked her prisoner's hair gently to indicate her peaceful intentions, but Grazia still recoiled from the advance. "And you, my useful one," the cynocephalus turned back to the human. "Your travel plans sound lovely, but consider yourself free to follow along if you wish to continue being useful." Bruto sighed, and wondered how his thread of fate had come to such an unbearable knot. Thank you for joining me, dear reader. If you'd like to help me out, you can press the like button. Let me know what's on your mind in the comments. And you can buy my books on Amazon. Link in the description. And with any luck, we'll all meet again.